The rhythmic patter of rain against helmets mingles with shallow breaths of exhausted men. June 1944, Normandy, France. Through a mud-streaked scope, Staff Sergeant Thomas Harlow squints, his weathered face locked in concentration. The crosshairs settle on a German machine gun nest 800 yards away, a shot most snipers wouldn't attempt. "Wind's picking up, Tom," whispers Lieutenant James Sullivan, spotter and childhood friend, his voice barely audible over distant artillery. 3 clicks left. Harlow's finger hovers over the trigger of the experimental M29 precision system, the weapon the brass called perfect back in training. Its gleaming components and revolutionary optical system promised unprecedented accuracy, but now, caked in mud and salt spray from the landing, it feels like a stranger in his hands. "I can't get a clean reading," Harlow mutters, wrestling with the rifle's complex adjustment system. Each second of delay costs lives as American soldiers remain pinned down on the beach below. Sullivan's binoculars reveal a young German soldier repositioning his gun. He's moving. Now or never. In that moment, Harlow abandons the rifle's sophisticated calculations, trusting instinct honed from hunting in Tennessee mountains. The shot cracks through the dawn air, a fraction too high. The German soldier ducks, then swings his weapon toward the muzzle flash that betrayed their position. "Move!" Sullivan shouts as a barrage of return fire erupts around them. As they scramble for cover, Harlow's gaze locks with Sullivan's, both men recognizing the same terrible truth. The perfect weapon had failed them when it mattered most. 3 months earlier, Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. The concrete walls of the classified testing facility echoed with the sharp report of rifle fire as Harlow squeezed the trigger of the M29 for the first time. The bullet struck dead center of the target 1,000 yards away, and the room erupted in applause. "Gentlemen, what you're witnessing is the future of warfare," announced Colonel Walter Prescott, the architect behind the M29 precision system. A brilliant ballistics engineer with wire-rimmed glasses and manicured hands that had never seen combat, Prescott represented everything Harlow distrusted about command decisions made far from the front lines. "This weapon incorporates advanced German optical technology we've acquired," Prescott continued, "combined with our own ballistic computation system. It can calculate wind speed, temperature, humidity, and elevation automatically." Sullivan whispered to Harlow, "Sounds like a weapon designed by someone who's never had to clean mud out of a firing pin while being shot at." A flash of memory seized Harlow, Guadalcanal, 1943. The screams of his previous spotter, Private Miller, bleeding out from a stomach wound after their position was compromised. Harlow had missed a crucial shot when his standard-issue Springfield rifle jammed. The guilt of that moment had driven him to volunteer for this experimental sniper program, hoping better technology might save lives. "Each of you has been selected for your exceptional marksmanship," Prescott addressed the dozen snipers gathered. "You'll be the first to deploy this weapon in combat. Your success will change the course of this war." That night, in the barracks, Sullivan discovered Harlow disassembling the rifle, studying each component with intense focus. "You don't trust it?" Sullivan observed, sitting beside his friend. "It has 17 moving parts where the Springfield has 7, Harlow replied. "More parts mean more potential failures." He held up a delicate adjustment dial. "This thing seizes up in the cold. What happens in the mountains of France?" Sullivan nodded, understanding the weight Harlow carried. They'd grown up hunting together in the Appalachian foothills, 2 poor kids who could only afford 1 bullet per hunt. Missing wasn't an option back home, was it? Harlow's hands trembled slightly, a new development since Guadalcanal that he fought to conceal. "We had one rule, make the first shot count." During the following weeks of training, the complexity of the M29 became increasingly apparent. The rifle required constant recalibration. While exceptional in controlled environments, field tests revealed vulnerabilities to moisture and temperature fluctuations. Half the squad struggled with its theoretical approach to marksmanship. "This is ridiculous," complained Sergeant Davis after failing to hit a moving target during a rainstorm. "The manual says to calculate 16 variables before taking a shot." By then, the enemies had coffee and written home to mother. Colonel Prescott remained unmoved by concerns. Adapt or be replaced. The future belongs to precision. The night before deployment, Harlow received a letter. His brother Michael had been killed in Italy. The letter contained no details, just condolences for a body that would never be returned home. Harlow sat alone on his bunk, the weight of the M29 across his lap suddenly unbearable. Sullivan found him there, staring at nothing. Without words, he sat beside his friend, shoulders touching in silent solidarity. "I promised our mother I'd bring him home," Harlow finally whispered. "Now all that's left is making sure his death meant something." As dawn broke over the English Channel on D-Day, Harlow made a private vow. Whatever the cost, he would make this complicated weapon work, not for Prescott or his theories, but for the men whose lives depended on his accuracy. Hey folks, I'd love to know where you're watching this video from. Drop your location in the comments below. 1 week after their narrow escape on D-Day, Harlow and Sullivan found themselves attached to the 4th Infantry Division, pushing inland through the hedgerows of Normandy. Their mission: eliminate key German officers coordinating the defense of a strategic crossroads at St. Lo. In a bombed-out farmhouse that served as their temporary headquarters, tension crackled between the snipers and Captain Richard Winters, the pragmatic company commander. "Your fancy rifle failed to take out that machine gun nest," Winters said, studying maps spread across a makeshift table. 3 men died because of it. "The M29 needs ideal conditions," Sullivan interjected, defending his friend. "War doesn't provide ideal conditions," Winters replied coldly. Harlow disassembled the rifle for the 3rd time that day, meticulously cleaning each component. "I've modified the humidity seals," he said without looking up. "It won't happen again." Lieutenant Colonel Prescott arrived unexpectedly that evening, his jeep splattered with mud from the rutted French roads. Despite the frontline conditions, his uniform remained impeccably pressed. "Washington is expecting reports of the M29's performance," he announced, refusing the offered K-rations. "They are considering full production based on your field results." Harlow exchanged glances with Sullivan. They hadn't reported the weapon's failures, hoping to correct the issues themselves. "The rifle performed inconsistently during initial deployment," Sullivan admitted. Prescott's expression hardened. "Inconsistency reflects on the operator, not the technology. Perhaps we selected the wrong men." Later that night, Private Jenkins, a fresh-faced replacement radio man, approached Harlow as he kept watch. "Is it true what they say about you? That you had 30 confirmed kills in the Pacific?" Harlow continued scanning the tree line through his binoculars. "They count bodies. I remember faces." Jenkins hesitated. "The captain told me you're using some kind of super weapon. Can I see it?" Reluctantly, Harlow showed him the M29. Jenkins whistled, running his fingers over the complex scope assembly. "My father makes watches in Pennsylvania," Jenkins said. "This reminds me of his work, beautiful machinery, but one speck of dust in the wrong place and the whole thing stops." The insight struck Harlow profoundly. He'd been trying to force himself to become the perfect machine the rifle demanded, rather than adapting the tool to the human behind it. The next morning brought heavy fog, ideal cover for their approach to German positions. Captain Winters outlined the plan. Harlow and Sullivan would set up on a ridge overlooking the German command post, eliminating the officers as they emerged for their morning briefing. As they moved through the mist-shrouded forest, Sullivan suddenly stopped, grabbing Harlow's arm. "Something's wrong," he whispered. "The bird calls, they're too rhythmic." Before they could retreat, German voices called out. They were surrounded by a patrol that had been tracking them since dawn. In the confusion that followed, Harlow made a split-second decision. Instead of surrendering, he fired from the hip, an impossible shot with a sniper rifle, hitting the German patrol leader. Sullivan reacted instantly, throwing a grenade that provided cover for their escape. They ran through the forest, German bullets splintering trees around them. When they finally reached safety, Sullivan confronted Harlow. "You took that shot without calculations, without proper stance, everything the M29 manual forbids." "I used it like my grandfather's hunting rifle," Harlow admitted. "I stopped thinking about the technology and trusted my instincts." That night, hunched over the disassembled A-29 by lamplight, Harlow made a decision. Using tools scrounged from the company mechanic, he began modifying the rifle, simplifying the adjustment system, stripping away non-essential components, and calibrating the scope to his personal shooting style. When Prescott discovered these unauthorized modifications during an inspection, his rage was palpable. "You've destroyed government property," he shouted. "This is sabotage." "I've made it work in actual combat conditions," Harlow countered, standing his ground. "The perfect rifle is useless if it can't function in the hands of an imperfect soldier." The confrontation escalated until Captain Winters intervened. "Colonel, with all due respect, I need snipers who can hit targets, not maintain museum pieces. Sergeant Harlow has my authorization to adapt his equipment as needed." Prescott's face reddened. "This goes above your head, Captain. Washington has millions invested in this program." As Prescott stormed off, Sullivan approached with intercepted German communications. "They're moving their command post tomorrow at dawn, our only chance to complete the mission." Harlow nodded grimly. "Then we move tonight." As darkness fell over the French countryside, Harlow made final adjustments to his modified M29, no longer the pristine weapon of laboratory precision, but a battle-worn tool adapted to the realities of war. Hey everyone! If you're enjoying this historical narrative, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers on our channel, and every single one of you helps us get there. Your support means everything to us. Rain poured in relentless sheets as Harlow and Sullivan crawled through mud toward their position, 300 yards from the German command post, a stone farmhouse requisitioned by Wehrmacht officers. The modified M29, wrapped in waterproofed canvas, felt heavier with each yard gained. By midnight, they reached their hide, the collapsed bell tower of a bombed-out church. As Sullivan established observation with night binoculars, Harlow methodically set up his rifle, now stripped of its most delicate components but enhanced with crude modifications that allowed for faster adjustment. "Command expects confirmation of at least 3 officer eliminations before extraction," Sullivan whispered, checking his watch. "We have 6 hours until our pickup." Harlow merely nodded, conserving energy and focus. The rain gradually subsided, leaving a heavy mist that diffused the moonlight, good for concealment but challenging for visibility. At 0400 hours, activity stirred at the farmhouse. German officers began arriving for their pre-dawn briefing. Through his scope, Harlow identified the commanding officer, an Oberstleutnant with Iron Cross decorations. "Target 1 acquired," he murmured. Sullivan verified through his spotting scope. "Wind coming from the east, for knots. Range 275 yards. Harlow made mental calculations, no longer relying on the rifle's automated systems. His finger took up the first pressure on the trigger as he exhaled slowly. The rifle cracked once, its report dampened by the mist. "Target down," Sullivan confirmed as the German officer collapsed. Immediate chaos erupted at the farmhouse. Instead of scattering, however, the Germans implemented practiced protocols, darkening windows and establishing defensive positions with alarming speed. "They're too disciplined," Sullivan hissed. "Someone trained them well for sniper responses." A flash of movement caught Harlow's attention, a German soldier pointing directly at their position. Impossibly, they'd been spotted. "Move!" Harlow commanded, but as they turned to evacuate, machine gun fire erupted, pinning them in the bell tower. Sullivan flinched as bullets chipped stone inches from his head. "They've got us bracketed. No way out." Through his scope, Harlow identified the machine gun position 400 yards away. At this angle, with gusting wind, it represented one of the most difficult shots of his career. He swung the M29 around, settling into position. Sullivan read the conditions rapidly. Adjusting 20 MOA right, 5 down. "But Tom, the rifle's not rated for this angle in these conditions." "The manual isn't, you mean," Harlow replied, making his own adjustments based on instinct rather than tables. The first shot missed by inches. German fire intensified, tearing through their position. Sullivan cried out as shrapnel grazed his arm. "I need coordinates for artillery support," Sullivan said, reaching for the radio. No time, Harlow replied, chambering another round. The second shot found its mark, silencing the machine gun temporarily. As Harlow shifted to target a German spotter, catastrophe struck. A mortar round impacted nearby, and the concussion sent the M29 tumbling from the ledge, landing 10 feet below on the church's stone floor. Sullivan stared in horror. "The rifle, cover me," Harlow ordered, abandoning safety to scramble down the treacherous ruins. When he reached the weapon, his heart sank. The precision scope had cracked, the adjustment system mangled beyond field repair. The perfect rifle was now little more than expensive scrap metal. German troops began advancing on their position. Sullivan fired his sidearm in desperation, but they were hopelessly outmatched. In that moment, Harlow spotted something in the rubble, an abandoned Kar 98K, the standard German infantry rifle. Without hesitation, he snatched it up, checking its action and finding it operational with 5 rounds remaining. "What are you doing?" Sullivan called down. "That's just a standard rifle." Harlow climbed back to their position with the German weapon. "Before the M29, before all the technology, this is what I learned on. The fundamentals don't change." With Germans closing in from 3 directions, Harlow took up position with the enemy rifle. No complex calculations, no precision optics, just iron sights, practiced breath control, and the instincts honed since childhood. 5 shots rang out in rapid succession. 5 German soldiers fell. Sullivan stared in disbelief. "How? My grandfather said it best," Harlow replied, already moving toward their extraction route. "It's not the arrow, it's the archer." As dawn broke over the horizon, they rendezvoused with an American patrol 1 mile from the church. Captain Winters received their report with a grim nod. "The intelligence you gathered on their defensive positions will save hundreds of lives," he told them. "But Colonel Prescott is demanding answers about his rifle." Harlow handed over the damaged M29. "Tell him the perfect rifle wasn't built for an imperfect world." Later, as medics treated Sullivan's wounds, he studied his friend with newfound respect. "What will you tell Prescott about the German rifle?" Harlow cleaned mud from his hands, his expression unreadable. "That sometimes the simplest tool in skilled hands outperforms the most advanced technology. The question is whether anyone back home wants to hear that truth." August 1944, 2 months after the St. Lo operation. A military hospital in newly liberated Paris. Harlow sat beside Sullivan's bed, where his friend recovered from wounds sustained during subsequent missions. Though Sullivan's external injuries were healing well, both men carried invisible scars that medical science couldn't touch. "They're shutting down the M29 program," Harlow said, unfolding a letter that had arrived that morning. "Prescott's been reassigned to a desk in Washington." Sullivan managed a weak smile. "Couldn't have happened to a nicer fellow. What about you?" "Orders came through." Harlow nodded. "They're sending me back to train new snipers. Apparently, my unorthodox techniques warrant study." The irony wasn't lost on either man. The military that had once demanded they adapt to an impossible weapon now wanted to learn from Harlow's rejection of its underlying philosophy. The hospital ward door swung open, revealing an unexpected visitor, Major General William Harrison, commander of Special Operations. Both men attempted to stand at attention, but the general waved them back to their seats. "At ease. This isn't an official visit." Harrison pulled up a chair. "I've reviewed your after-action reports from Normandy through St. Lo. Fascinating reading." Harlow remained silent, uncertain whether criticism or commendation would follow. "The M29 program cost $17 million, Harrison continued. "Designed by our brightest minds, tested in perfect conditions. Yet it failed where it mattered most." He fixed his gaze on Harlow. "I want to understand why you abandoned it." Sullivan interjected. "With respect, sir, he didn't abandon the mission." "I'm aware of the results, Lieutenant. 5 confirmed eliminations with a captured enemy rifle. Remarkable." Harrison leaned forward. "What I want to know is what that teaches us about our approach to this war." For the first time since their return, Harlow articulated the philosophy he'd developed through bitter experience. The M29 was designed for a theoretical battlefield, sir. It demanded perfect conditions and operators who functioned like machines. But war is chaos and soldiers are human. Harlow's voice grew stronger as he continued. We weren't failing the rifle. The rifle was failing us by not accounting for the human element. Harrison nodded thoughtfully. Go on. The Germans understand this. Their weapons are simpler, more robust. They train their soldiers to master fundamentals rather than rely on technology that might fail. Harlow hesitated before adding, we're winning this war not because of superior technology, but despite our over-reliance on it. After Harrison departed, promising changes to the sniper training program, Sullivan turned to his friend. You didn't tell him everything. About what? About that night before we left the church. I saw you. Sullivan's voice dropped. You took out that German officer at 800 yards with their rifle. That shot shouldn't have been possible without the M29's capabilities. Harlow stared out the window at the Paris skyline, buildings still bearing the scars of occupation and liberation. The difference was I believed I could make that shot. With M29, I was always questioning, always calculating. With the Kar 98K, I simply trusted myself. When Harlow reported to the sniper school at Camp Mackle in September, he found not the sterile training environment he expected, but a course redesigned based on battlefield realities. The cadets he would train came not from shooting competitions and mathematical backgrounds, but from hunting communities, game wardens, and hardscrabble farms like his own. Among his first students was Jenkins, the young radio man from Normandy, now training as a sniper himself. I requested this assignment because of you, Sergeant, Jenkins admitted during their first marksmanship session. I want to learn how you made those impossible shots. Harlow handed him a standard Springfield rifle. First, forget everything you've heard about technology solving your problems. A rifle is just a tool. Your mind, your judgment, your instincts, that's what makes the difference. As weeks passed, Harlow incorporated lessons from both his failures and successes into the training. His students learned to shoot in simulated rainstorms, to adjust for wind by feel rather than calculations, to maintain their weapons under battlefield conditions rather than laboratory settings. Colonel Prescott made one final appearance at the camp in October, now reassigned to procurement evaluation. He watched silently from the observation platform as Harlow's trainees consistently outperformed graduates of the technical sniper programs. You've proven your point, Prescott acknowledged later, the admission clearly painful. But you should know the M29's principles aren't being abandoned. They're being redesigned, simplified based on your field modifications. Technology has its place, Harlow conceded, but not at the expense of the fundamentals. That evening, alone in his quarters, Harlow finally opened the personal effects of his brother Michael, shipped back from Italy months after his death. Among them, he found a battered journal. The final entry read, "They're giving us new weapons tomorrow, supposedly better than anything the Germans have. The officers are excited, but I'd trade all their gadgets for more training like Tom got from our father. In the end, it's not about the weapon. It's about the man behind it." Tears blurred Harlow's vision as the words confirmed what had taken him years of war to understand. He had come full circle, rediscovering through combat what he had known intuitively as a boy hunting for his family's dinner. That perfection wasn't found in technology but in the harmony between human skill and simple, reliable tools. In November, Sullivan arrived at Camp Mackle, recovered enough for light duties. He found Harlow on the firing range after hours, teaching Jenkins that final elusive skill no manual could quantify, intuitive timing. "The brass want to interview you for some military journal," Sullivan announced. "They're calling your methods revolutionary." Harlow chuckled mirthlessly. There's nothing revolutionary about trusting human judgment over machines. Our grandfathers could have told them that for free. As winter settled over the training camp, letters arrived from their former unit, now fighting in the Ardennes. Their comrades wrote of brutal conditions where complex weapons froze and failed, while simpler tools remained reliable. In those harsh circumstances, the lessons Harlow had paid such a high price to learn were being validated daily. "You saved lives beyond those missions," Sullivan told him one evening as they reviewed training results. "Every sniper you train here carries your experience forward." Harlow nodded silently, finally finding some measure of peace. The perfect rifle had failed, but in that failure he had rediscovered an older, deeper truth about warfare and about himself that no technology could replace. April 1945, Camp Mackle. As morning mist rose from the training grounds, Harlow stood with the final class of snipers he would train before their deployment to the Pacific Theater. 20 men who had absorbed not just techniques but philosophy, the understanding that technology serves the warrior, not the reverse. "The weapon you carry matters less than what you carry inside," he told them, echoing words that had become his unofficial doctrine. "Instinct, judgment, adaptability, these are your true advantages." Jenkins, now an instructor himself, added, "Remember what Sergeant Harlow taught us. In perfect conditions, any rifle will do. It's in the worst conditions that you discover what truly works." After dismissal, Sullivan approached with a telegram. "It's official. Germany's collapse is imminent." The men exchanged a look that contained multitudes, relief, remembrance of those lost, and the solemn recognition that their hard-won wisdom had helped hasten this moment. That evening, as they walked the perimeter of the camp, Sullivan gestured toward a crate being unloaded from a truck, new rifles with elements clearly inspired by Harlow's field modifications to the M29. "Your legacy," Sullivan observed. "They're calling it the M1C. Simpler, sturdier, designed for actual human beings in actual combat." Harlow studied the weapons with qualified approval. They finally learned that perfection isn't about flawless performance in ideal conditions. It's about reliability when everything goes wrong. As sunset painted the North Carolina sky in shades of amber and crimson, Harlow reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from the theoretical perfection that had failed in Normandy's mud to the hard-earned wisdom that had saved lives at St. Lo. The perfect weapon, he realized, isn't a rifle at all. It's the human capacity to adapt, to persevere when technology fails, to find strength in simplicity when complexity becomes a liability. In the distance, new recruits practiced with their standard-issue rifles, mastering fundamentals that would serve them when theories and calculations faltered. In their focused determination, Harlow saw the true future of warfare, not in unattainable perfection, but in the resilient human spirit that could triumph despite imperfect tools and impossible circumstances. The war that had begun with faith in technology was ending with renewed respect for the irreplaceable human element that no weapon, however advanced, could ever replicate. If you've enjoyed this exploration of military history and the human stories behind the technology, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this video with fellow history enthusiasts. Check out our other videos on forgotten weapons and tactical innovations that shaped modern warfare. And remember, in the comments below, let us know which historical military technology you'd like us to explore next. This is History Arsenal, where we bring the past to life, one story at a time.